It was late autumn when Alina moved into her late grandmother's Victorian-style house in a small, sleepy town in Massachusetts. The house, inherited through a will, had been vacant for years, its windows shuttered and roof covered in creeping ivy. Locals often whispered about the house, but Alina didn't believe in ghost stories. She was a practical 22-year-old journalism student who just wanted peace and quiet to finish her final thesis. The house creaked with age, and its halls smelled faintly of lavender and mildew. But beneath the dust and cobwebs, it had charm: stained glass windows, tall archways, and a library that still held books older than her. For Alina, it felt like stepping into a forgotten world. One rainy afternoon, as she was exploring the attic, she stumbled across an object covered in a thick white sheet. The air was strangely cold near it. Curious, she pulled the sheet off, revealing a tall, ornate mirror with a black wooden frame carved in swirling, thorn-like patterns. Its glass was slightly fogged, and for a second she thought her reflection looked delayed. But she shook it off. As she examined the frame more closely, she noticed strange symbols etched along the border. They looked ancient, not decorative. At the bottom corner, almost hidden beneath grime, a warning was scratched in English: "Do not look into this mirror at midnight." Alina's heart skipped a beat. She ran her fingers over the message, wondering if it was a joke. But the handwriting was deep and desperate, like someone had carved it in a hurry. It made her uneasy. She decided to drag the mirror downstairs and place it in the hallway outside her room, telling herself it was just a mirror and maybe worth something. Still, that night, she dreamed of flickering candlelight and her own face watching her from inside the glass. When she awoke, the mirror was just there, still and silent. Over the next few days, she couldn't shake her curiosity. What was the story behind the mirror? Why the warning? She searched the house and found old photo albums and journals in a chest in the basement. One yellow journal belonged to her grandmother's sister, Clara, a woman Alina had never heard of. Inside was a short entry dated October 12, 1965. "I saw it again last night. The mirror moved. My reflection is no longer mine. I told Mother, but she won't listen. She says it's all in my head. But I know the truth now: something is inside that mirror. And it wants to come out." Alina's hands trembled as she closed the journal. She had never believed in the supernatural, but this was too specific. Her grandmother had never mentioned a sister. Why was Clara erased from family history? Still, she tried to dismiss it. She had a paper to finish, bills to pay, and no time for ghost stories. But the mirror became impossible to ignore. Sometimes she would pass it and swear her reflection was smiling just a second too long. Other times she felt cold even when the rest of the house was warm. And every night she woke at exactly 3 a.m. drenched in sweat. One afternoon, while dusting around the mirror, she noticed that the warning had changed. Where before it had said, "Do not look into this mirror at midnight," it now read, "Do not look again." Her breath caught. She hadn't looked at midnight, not yet. But somehow the mirror seemed to know her thoughts. That night, she covered it again with the sheet. She even thought about taking it outside and smashing it, but something in her resisted. What if it really was cursed? What if destroying it made things worse? In the end, she left it covered, standing like a silent sentinel in the hallway. But the mirror had already started something. Something ancient, something waiting. After the strange events surrounding the mirror, Alina couldn't focus. Her thesis remained untouched. She couldn't sleep, and she began avoiding the hallway where the mirror stood, now permanently shrouded in a white sheet like a ghost waiting for midnight. The house, once peaceful and quiet, now felt like it was listening. The next day, Alina decided she needed answers. She began her search at the local library, which surprisingly still kept a dusty, untouched archive section on the town's history. She approached the elderly librarian, Mrs. Whitley, who remembered her grandmother. "Oh, you must be Edna's granddaughter," the librarian said, peering over her glasses. She was a kind woman. Never spoke much about her family, though. Alina mentioned the mirror, trying to sound casual. "I found this old mirror in her attic. Strange thing. There was a warning carved into it. Said not to look at it at midnight." The librarian's face went pale. "The thorn mirror," she whispered. "That cursed thing is still around?" Alina leaned in. "You've heard of it?" Mrs. Whitley nodded slowly. "It's an old legend in this town. Few people talk about it anymore. Some say it belonged to a spiritualist during the 1800s, a woman named Margaret Thorne. She conducted seances, mirror rituals. Her house burned down one night under mysterious circumstances. Some believe she trapped a spirit in one of her scrying mirrors before she died." Alina felt her skin prickle. Did people actually die because of it? Well, Mrs. Whitley hesitated. There were reports over the years. A young girl in the 60s went mad after staring into a mirror for hours. She claimed her reflection was speaking to her. Her name was Clara Langdon. Disappeared shortly after. Alina froze. Clara, that was my grandmother's sister. Mrs. Whitley looked genuinely disturbed. Then you may want to get rid of that mirror, dear. These things, these objects, they're not always just wood and glass. They can carry things with them. Echoes. Attachments. Alina thanked her and checked out every book she could find on mirror folklore and cursed objects. That night, back in the house, she lit candles in the kitchen and began reading. She learned that mirrors have long been thought to be portals, not just reflective surfaces but spiritual gateways. In many cultures, mirrors were covered after someone died to prevent the soul from becoming trapped. Some rituals used mirrors to speak with the dead, while others warned of mirrors stealing souls if stared into too long. She came across one passage that made her heart race. At the hour of midnight, when the veil between worlds is thin, a cursed mirror may serve as a window, or worse, a doorway. Should one look into such a mirror at that time, their reflection may no longer be their own. The next morning, Alina visited an antique shop on the edge of town. The owner, a quiet man named Elias, had a shop filled with peculiar items. Old clocks, dolls, rusty lanterns, and mirrors. She showed him a photo of her mirror. Elias recoiled. You need to stay away from that. That's a thorn mirror. So you've seen it before? Not that exact one. But there were a few made. They say Margaret Thorne bound something in them. Not a ghost, not a demon exactly. Something older. Something that feeds on identity. The mirror watches. And if you stare at it too long, or at the wrong time, it sees you. Alina felt nauseous. Is there a way to break it? Destroy it? Elias shook his head. You don't destroy something like that. You contain it. Keep it sealed, covered, away from moonlight, especially on the full moon. And whatever you do, never look into it at midnight. That's when it's strongest. Alina left the shop with her mind racing. Everything pointed to one thing. The mirror wasn't just haunted, it was hungry. And now it was in her home, closer to her every day. She returned home just before sunset. As she walked past the mirror in the hallway, she stopped. The sheet was gone. The mirror stood uncovered, silently reflecting her face. But this time, her reflection blinked before she did. For the rest of the evening, Alina couldn't stop thinking about what she saw, or thought she saw, in the mirror. That blink, that slight delay in her reflection. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it made her skin crawl. She was certain she had left the mirror covered. The sheet had been tucked in, wrapped securely over it. She remembered doing it just the night before. Now it stood there, exposed again, as if the mirror itself had grown tired of being hidden. Alina slowly approached it. Her reflection stared back. Same eyes, same hair, same anxious look. But still something was off. It was like looking at a version of herself from a dream. A little too still, a little too knowing. She quickly fetched the sheet and covered the mirror again, forcing herself not to look directly into the glass. That night, she locked her bedroom door, turned on all the lights, and tried to convince herself it was just paranoia. That she was exhausted. That her imagination was doing what it always did when she was stressed, spiraling. But sleep wouldn't come. She lay awake, watching the digital clock on her nightstand. 11:43 p.m. Tick. 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 Something gnawed at her, a voice inside her head that wasn't quite hers. It whispered questions. What are you so afraid of? What do you think you'll see? She sat up, heart pounding. The hallway was silent. 11:51 p.m. Alina threw off the blanket, pacing her room. It was just a mirror. Just a piece of glass and wood. She had studied psychology. She understood the concept of suggestion, of the mind playing tricks when primed with fear. Maybe the whole story was just that, a legend passed down and exaggerated until people believed the mirror had power. She walked to her bedroom door and placed her hand on the knob. Paused. 11:56 p.m. Her breath quickened. A cold sweat formed on her neck. Don't go, part of her warned. But another part, deeper, darker, was already pushing the door open. She stepped out into the dim hallway. The only light came from the moon filtering through the stained glass at the end of the corridor. The sheet had slipped off the mirror again, or had it been pulled? Alina took a step closer. Her bare feet touched the cold floorboards. Her reflection came into view. She tilted her head slightly. Her reflection did the same. 11:59 p.m. One more minute. She stood there frozen, arms folded tightly across her chest. She could turn back now. Walk away. Cover it again. Forget about it. But instead, she whispered to herself, just one look. Just to see. The clock in the hallway chimed once, the sound ancient, hollow. Midnight. Alina stepped in front of the mirror. At first, everything looked the same. Her reflection stared back at her, mirroring her every move. She exhaled in relief. See, she said softly. Nothing. But as she turned slightly to go, her reflection didn't move. Alina froze. She turned back slowly, and there it was. Her reflection still faced the mirror, staring directly into her eyes. Then slowly it smiled. Alina didn't. Her legs refused to move. The air grew thick, pressing against her chest like water. Behind the reflection, the mirror seemed to deepen, no longer showing the hallway but a pitch-black space like an endless void. Then the reflection raised its hand. Alina didn't. It placed its palm on the inside of the glass. The mirror rippled like the surface of a pond disturbed by wind. Alina stumbled back, heart hammering. The reflection lowered its hand, and for a split second its eyes turned pitch black. The hallway light flickered. Somewhere deep in the house a door slammed. And then, silence. The reflection was back to normal, mimicking her every move. But Alina knew something had changed. She backed away, trembling. She grabbed the sheet, covered the mirror again, this time taping the corners, pushing a chair in front of it like a flimsy barricade. Back in her room, she locked the door and stayed awake until morning. But the memory of that smile, that movement, it burned into her mind. She had looked. Now, the mirror had seen her. And whatever was inside knew she was watching back. Alina didn't sleep that night. She couldn't. The mirror had changed. Her reflection had moved on its own, smiled without her, and reached out as if trying to break through the glass. It wasn't imagination anymore, something had crossed a line. And maybe something had crossed over. The next morning, she barely recognized herself in the bathroom mirror. Her face looked pale, sunken, and haunted by fear. But it wasn't just that. When she stared at her reflection too long, even in a different mirror, she noticed the smallest delay, like her image was watching, thinking, waiting for her to turn away. She left the house that morning, locking the door behind her. She went straight to Elias's antique shop, clutching her coat tight, like the cold could protect her. Elias took one look at her and grimaced. You looked at it, didn't you? I thought it was nothing, she said, almost breaking down. But something looked back, smiled at me. It moved. Elias exhaled sharply and pulled a small, leather-bound book from beneath the counter. Once it makes contact, the boundaries between you and it begin to break down. You didn't just look into the mirror, you opened a door. And now it knows who you are. Alina swallowed. So what happens now? It depends. If you resist it, it might retreat. But if you feed it with fear, obsession, or contact, it grows stronger. That's how it crosses over fully. He opened the book to an old page. A charcoal drawing showed a woman with black eyes stepping out of a mirror, her features twisted but still recognizable, like a shadow version of herself. They call it the other. It's not quite a ghost. It's not even human. But it learns by watching. It studies you until it becomes you. And then, it takes your place, Alina whispered. Elias nodded. Or worse, it shares your body. You begin to blur, piece by piece. Alina left the shop with a blessed mirror charm he gave her, and a small pouch of herbs to hang in the corners of her room. He also warned her to never look into the mirror again. Not even covered. It remembers you. It's waiting for your attention. But the house felt different when she returned. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was aware. As if the walls could breathe. As if every floorboard she stepped on echoed too loud. She moved through the house like she was being watched because she was. The mirror was still covered in the hallway. But the sheet moved gently despite the air being still. Alina backed away and went to her room, drawing the curtains and lighting every candle Elias had given her. But that night, she woke with a start. Her clock read 3:03 a.m. again, the same time as every night since she found the mirror. Only this time, there was a sound. A dragging sound. Like cloth across wood. Then footsteps. Her bedroom door creaked open. She stared in horror. It was her. Another her. Standing in the doorway, face half-shadowed, head tilted, smiling that same slow, unnatural smile she saw in the mirror. But this version of her had black eyes, hollow, bottomless, like ink spilled across a white canvas. Alina screamed and reached for the lamp. Light filled the room and the other her was gone. The door was still closed. There were no footsteps. No sound. She stared at the door for what felt like hours. She wasn't sure if it had been a dream or real. But one thing was now certain. The boundary between her and the other was no longer firm. It had crossed over, if only in fragments. Now it was inside her house and maybe even inside her. Alina tried to convince herself it was a nightmare. The figure in the doorway, her double with pitch-black eyes, had to be just a dream. But deep down, she knew better. Something inside her had shifted. Something in her home had turned. Over the next few days, she tried to go back to normal. She avoided the hallway, ignored the mirror, and kept her candles lit at night. But the changes began subtly, and they began within her. It started with the reflections. Every time she caught herself in a mirror, the bathroom, her phone screen, a window, there was a moment, a flicker of delay, like her reflection had to catch up. Then the differences became clearer. Her reflection sometimes wore a different expression. Once she turned away from the mirror and swore she saw herself still staring back. Then came the blackouts. They were brief at first, a few seconds where she'd forget what she was doing. She'd find herself standing in a different room with no memory of walking there. Or holding something she didn't remember picking up. One afternoon, she snapped out of it and found herself in the hallway directly in front of the covered mirror, her hand slowly reaching to pull the sheet down. She screamed and pulled her hand away, backing up in terror. "No," she whispered. "You're not me. I won't let you in." But the thing inside her was growing stronger. It was most powerful at night. She could feel it pressing against her thoughts, nudging her into confusion, fear, and self-doubt. She'd wake up with bruises on her arms and legs, with dirt under her fingernails like she'd been clawing at the floor. And worse, she started hearing whispers in her own voice. "Let me in. You're tired. I can take over. We're the same." Once, while brushing her teeth, her hand suddenly jammed the toothbrush deep into her mouth. Painfully, forcefully. Blood mixed with foam. She dropped it, gasping, shaking. But in the mirror, her reflection was still brushing calmly, with a faint smile. She ran to Elias. He was waiting for her, almost like he knew. "She's inside," Alina told him, voice trembling. "I'm losing time. I can feel her taking over." He nodded grimly. "The more attention you give the mirror, the stronger it becomes. The more fear it feeds on, the deeper the possession. Your will is the only thing keeping you separate." Alina clenched her fists. "Then how do I stop it? Destroy the mirror?" "No," Elias said. "If you break it now, you'll trap her inside you. The final step of possession is complete integration. If the mirror is broken while she's halfway in, you'll be gone. Forever." "So what do I do?" "There's a ritual," he said. "Old, dangerous, but it can work. It forces the reflection to show its true form and you can banish it. But it has to be done at midnight when the veil is thinnest. When she's strongest." Alina was terrified. "Face her again? At midnight?" "But if I lose, then she becomes you," Elias said. "For good." He gave her a silver-framed hand mirror, a vial of salt, and a list of incantations written in Latin. She had to draw a circle around the mirror, light a specific herb mixture, and then face her reflection at exactly 12 a.m. That night, Alina prepared everything. The hallway was dimly lit with candles. She drew the circle in chalk and salt, placed protective symbols on the walls, and laid the ritual tools in front of her. The mirror stood at the center, still covered. She stared at it, her heart pounding. This was it. Her last chance. The clock ticked down. 11:59. The air grew colder. The candles flickered, though no wind blew. The mirror began to vibrate like something was trying to push through. Midnight struck. Alina pulled off the sheet. And there she was. The reflection. Her twin smiling, calm, waiting. But this time, the face wasn't human anymore. Its mouth stretched too wide, its eyes fully black, and its skin pale as bone. Alina gritted her teeth. She stepped forward, raised the silver mirror, and began the incantation. The final battle had begun. The moment Alina tore the sheet off the mirror and began chanting the incantation, the air snapped like a whip. The temperature dropped. Her breath became visible, white puffs in the freezing air of her own hallway. The figure in the mirror, her reflection, but not truly hers, tilted its head, watching with unsettling calm. Its mouth was too wide, stretched unnaturally at the corners, and its eyes were nothing but empty, swirling black voids. Not eyes at all, just holes where something ancient stared out. Alina stood firm inside the chalk and salt circle Elias had instructed her to draw. In her shaking hand, she held the silver-framed mirror, its surface reflecting not herself, but swirling mist. Elias had warned her, this mirror must never reflect you. It reflects only the spirit. Use it to trap her. She recited the Latin chant from the parchment, Speculum tenebris, red verum vultum, operare demonium inter vitrum et umbrum. The mirror on the wall began to ripple as if it were liquid, not glass. The reflection grinned wider, hands now pressing against the inside of the glass. Then came the sound, a scratching from behind the mirror. A soft tapping like fingernails on wood, growing louder, faster. The reflection began to speak, though its mouth didn't move. Let me in, Alina. You're tired. I can make it easier. She kept chanting, louder now, over the whispers, over the wind that suddenly roared down the hallway. Red verum vultum. A flash of light burst from the mirror, and suddenly the reflection wasn't smiling anymore. It was screaming. Its mouth gaped open, wider than possible, emitting a soundless howl that vibrated through the walls. The lights above flickered violently. One by one, the candles blew out. Only the flame in Alina's hand, the protective bundle of burning herbs, remained lit, struggling to stay alive. The figure inside the mirror began clawing at the glass from the inside. Not scratching, punching, like it was trying to break out. Alina grabbed the silver mirror and raised it toward the large one. At first, it showed nothing but fog. Then slowly, there she was. The spirit's true form. Gone was the fake skin, the copied face. What stared back at Alina now was a monstrous version of herself, black, eyeless sockets, a mouth filled with jagged teeth, hair floating as if underwater, her arms unnaturally long and reaching outward. Alina screamed the final line of the ritual. Recludera veritatem, claude portam. Reveal the truth. Seal the gate. The chalk circle around her ignited. A ring of white-blue flames surrounding her like a barrier. The mirror on the wall shattered, but not with shards. Instead, it peeled open like torn fabric, revealing a swirling vortex of darkness, as though another world was trying to bleed into hers. The spirit lunged forward from the rift, but Alina thrust the silver mirror between them. The spirit was sucked into it, screaming, twisting, clawing. The thing struggled as it was pulled into the tiny reflective surface. Alina nearly dropped the mirror from the heat and pressure, but she held on. With every word of the ritual, the spirit's image dimmed, faded, and finally silence. The silver mirror went ice-cold in her hand. The swirling mist inside stopped moving. It was done. Alina dropped to her knees inside the protective circle, gasping, crying, a mixture of fear, relief, and exhaustion. Around her, the candles reignited on their own, their flames calm now. The shattered wall mirror was just glass again, broken, powerless. She stared into the silver mirror. No reflection. Only gray mist. The spirit had been sealed. But she knew what Elias had warned, never break that mirror. As long as it's whole, she stays trapped. If you destroy it, she didn't need to hear the rest. She wrapped the silver mirror in black cloth and placed it in a locked box. Far away from any reflection. Far away from herself. But even as she tried to rest that night, she could still hear something faint, almost imaginary. A voice from the silver mirror. Whispering. Waiting. The ritual was complete. The creature, her shadow, her reflection, the other, was sealed inside the silver mirror. But Alina knew one thing with chilling certainty: it wasn't over. The house was quieter now. The oppressive energy that once clung to the walls seemed to lift, as though the air itself had been cleansed. Yet that silence didn't bring peace. It brought unease, like the eye of a storm, calm but temporary. For the first few nights, Alina kept the silver mirror locked inside a wooden box, which she placed in a drawer, wrapped tightly in thick black cloth. She even buried it under salt, following Elias's instructions. She slept with every light on, every mirror in the house covered, and the ritual circle still faintly visible on her hallway floor. But sleep didn't come easily. She would close her eyes, only to wake up at exactly 3:03 a.m., gasping, drenched in sweat, heart pounding. The house would be dead silent, and yet she'd feel it. A pressure, like someone was watching her from inside her head. She avoided mirrors completely, even reflective surfaces like glass, water, or polished wood. But sometimes, just in the corner of her vision, she'd see something, a flicker of movement, a shadow that mirrored her own too closely. She'd spin around and find nothing. But the feeling remained. It wasn't just in her head. The entity, though sealed, had left a mark. One morning, she woke up and found her nails scratched with dirt again. Her bedsheets were ripped. The hallway light was on, though she clearly remembered turning it off. The salt around the mirror box had moved. Not spilled. Not broken. Moved deliberately as if someone had drawn a pattern through it. A spiral. She rushed to Elias in panic. I did the ritual. I followed everything. She's still inside, right? Alina asked, desperation creeping into her voice. She is, Elias said carefully. But sealing doesn't mean forgetting. Spirits like her don't just go away. She's part of you now. Your reflection was the entry point, but your mind became the mirror. Alina shivered. So what now? You live carefully. You avoid mirrors during the witching hour. Never speak her name. Never believe the whispers. Because she will try. Every day. She's waiting for you to slip. To doubt. That's all she needs. Alina took his warning seriously. But resisting the pull became harder. She began hearing voices again, not from the mirror, but from herself. In the quiet moments when she was alone. You miss me. You'll never be whole without me. Just one look. One glance. Set me free. She started journaling her experiences. Writing helped until she flipped one of the pages and saw something she didn't write, a message scrawled in her handwriting. You were beautiful when we were one. Her hands trembled. The pen rolled off the desk. A mirror she hadn't noticed, a hand-sized compact left from an old purse, sat cracked on her floor. She hadn't used it in years. But someone had opened it. The reflection was warped, broken, but unmistakable. Black eyes. A smile. A promise. She slammed it shut and wrapped it in a cloth, heart racing. The haunting wasn't loud anymore. It was subtle, psychological. Deep. It knew she was afraid, and fear was the invitation. Every time Alina felt doubt, loneliness, or weakness, she felt the presence grow stronger, not outside her, but within. Like something whispering behind her thoughts. And sometimes her reflection still moved differently. A twitch. A delay. A smirk. She avoided friends, avoided speaking too long on video calls, afraid they'd notice something off. Afraid they'd see her, the other, peeking through her eyes. She became isolated. Watchful. Guarded. But never unaware. Because the haunting wasn't about ghosts anymore. It was about identity. About a shadow waiting to become flesh again. And every time she passed a blank screen or a puddle of water and saw her reflection just a beat behind. She remembered the mirror may be sealed, but she was never gone. It had been weeks since Alina performed the ritual. The silver mirror, still sealed inside the box, wrapped in cloth, buried in salt, sat untouched beneath her bed. She hadn't dared move it. She hadn't spoken to anyone in days. The apartment was dark most nights, with curtains drawn tight and all reflective surfaces covered or removed. But the whispers had grown bolder. They no longer hid in the shadows or dreams. They crept into her waking thoughts. You're not whole without me. One look. That's all it takes. Don't you want to see the truth again? Alina tried to drown them out, music, prayers, meditation, even Elias's protective chants whispered at midnight like mantras. But nothing silenced the pull. It wasn't just the voice. It was the feeling. A constant presence behind her like a shadow pressed against her back. A hunger. And deep inside her chest, an ache that she couldn't explain, as if part of her had been left behind in the mirror, screaming to be reunited. Then one night, the dreams changed. Instead of the usual nightmares, Alina found herself standing in a long hallway of mirrors. Each one reflected a different version of herself. Smiling, crying, angry, monstrous. But one stood still, silent, waiting. The true reflection. The one without eyes. The one that had always been there. Alina awoke drenched in sweat, sitting upright in bed. She looked at the floor beside her. The salt lines around the box had been broken. Not blown away. Disturbed. She stared at the box, heart pounding. Her hands moved on their own. Something inside her, curiosity, madness, possession, urged her forward. She knelt beside the box and unwrapped the mirror. The cloth was damp, cold, breathing. No, that was her. Hyperventilating. She touched the mirror's silver edge. It hummed, alive. Alina lifted it slowly. The surface was cloudy, like frosted glass, but not empty. The mist inside the mirror shifted as if reacting to her. It knew. She was back. Tears filled her eyes. I don't want this, she whispered. You're not me. The mist moved again, forming the outline of a face. Hers, but smiling, warm, welcoming. A version of her without fear. Without scars. Perfect. Let me out, it said. We were stronger together. She shook her head. No. You're not real. You're what I buried. You buried your truth. Her grip trembled. The voice wasn't just in her head now, it was echoing through the room. Leave me alone. The mirror's surface rippled. And suddenly she wasn't looking at a reflection anymore. She was looking into a window. A room. Her room. But from the other side. And in that room stood her. The entity. The other Alina. Watching her through the glass. The creature lifted its hand and mimicked her movements. A mirror image. But then it did something different. It smiled. And waved. Alina dropped the mirror in shock. It hit the floor and cracked, but didn't break. The mist inside twisted in panic, swirling faster. She knew what Elias had warned. Never break the mirror. As long as it's whole, she's sealed. But now the seal was weakening anyway. She had made contact. She had looked too long. In a moment of terror, clarity struck her. She couldn't keep hiding. Couldn't keep running. The final battle wasn't outside. It was within. She picked up the mirror again, hands steady now. The reflection stared back, furious, shaking the invisible walls. You are not me, Alina said calmly. I am the parts you fear. The reflection snarled. I am the strength you abandoned. Alina drew a final circle of salt, stood inside it, and whispered, I acknowledge you. I see you. But I do not need you. The mirror screamed. The glass glowed, cracked further. One final chant. Not from Elias, but from Alina's own strength, spilled from her lips. I name you mine, but I deny you power. The mirror shattered, not into pieces, but into light, blinding, brilliant, pure. The energy burst outward, lifting every shadow from the room. The box exploded into ash. The salt burned white. And then, silence. Real silence. No voice. No breath. Just peace. Alina collapsed, exhausted but free. The haunting was over. She had looked into the mirror, not at midnight, but at herself. And finally, she had chosen who she was, whole but no longer haunted. 12.